I now have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Binod Chaudhary, President Emeritus, CNI, to give his deliberations on this summit.
Mr. Bashnetji, Right Honorable Prime Minister, Sushil Koirala, Chief Guest of this afternoon, Honorable Guest of Honor, Sri Nitin Gadkari ji, Honorable Ministers, Dr. Ram Sharan Mahat, Sri Bimlendra Nidhi ji, my colleagues, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We've been, or at least I can say I've been counting every moment until the time Nitinji landed in Kathmandu. You know, twice in the past, CNI has faced a situation where we wanted to host a similar mega event. Once it was Mahathir Mohamad who was invited to share with us, albeit in a different political regime, how he built Malaysia. And he had to return back from the Malaysian Kuala Lumpur airport because we had a huge public unrest. The city was on fire because 15 Nepalese died in Iraq or were killed. Second time, it was Shri Narendra Modi ji, the then CM, 2012. We had the honor of having his consent. Everything was worked out for him to come and share his Gujarat model, the vibrant Gujarat model, and how we can learn, how we can replicate that. Sadly, there were certain political sensitivities, so to speak, and as a chief minister, he was not permitted to travel. So I was counting, you know, particularly when the Indian media started talking about Honorable Minister probably taking over as the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, we were literally in tears, you know. Not that we don't want to see you in that position. I think you've said you're much better off where you are today. Thank God you are here, Minister Saab. And I wish to extend a very, very warm welcome to you. We've had that conversation ever before the elections of your deep-rooted affection for this country, your desire to come and visit Pashupatinath and also to share what Nepal needs. Today we are also equally overwhelmed because we see this, look at this, the presence here, 550 registered delegates, and we had to refuse quite a few. This clearly manifests that Nepal is moving, particularly in the infrastructure arena. Or at least people are very optimistic. People do feel that the time is coming where not only G to G, not only government to government, but also the private sector can embark into major infrastructure initiatives. The recently signed PTA, the recently signed PDA by GMR, you know, something which was stuck for 4 years. The news that Satluj is going to sign the Upper Karnali during the forthcoming visit of the Prime Minister of India. The petroleum pipeline already in the process of getting executed. 2 of the Chinese companies having been awarded the contracts to build one airport in Pokhara and one in Bhairua, linking Lumbini, are clear signals that things are not going to be stalled anymore by politics. I think the sense of enthusiasm that exists in Nepal post the visit of the Prime Minister few months ago, about 5 months ago, have given a clear indication that India is going to work very closely with the South Asian nation. All those projects which have been stalled for one reason or other, and I can cite here the example of Pancheshwar. Despite the huge sort of political problem or tussle that went on at the time of signing of the Mahakali Treaty, even parties, one of the party which is a part of the coalition today, got split. That project could not move forward. Once again, that project is going to see a light of the day. Prime Minister Modi, when he was here, that whole process was restructured, and I'm told that within the 6 months' time, the DPR is going to be tabled. I also am equally enthusiastic to hear, encouraged to hear that the fast track road linking to Nijgarh and then to Birganj, the bidding is in the final stages, and within a month, if a decision is made, we should not be surprised. I remember what Modi ji had said when he was speaking at the parliament, that next few years, India is going to help you remove your darkness. Then it is going to be your turn to remove the darkness of India by exploiting hundreds of thousands of megawatts of power plants which have been sitting idle here. I think Nepalese people have that faith and that hope, the renewal of that faith and hope, and with that aspiration, I think we've all gathered here. But just G2G, government-to-government projects is not going to solve the problem. And even in the G2G problems, it is our strong conviction, looking at even the roadmap that India has pursued, or more importantly, more precisely, the then Chief Minister pursued. We need the partnership of China and Japan equally. We have His Excellency Chinese Ambassador here. We were hoping to have a ministerial delegation. I know what China has played, what role China has played in Gujarat. And we also know what the Japanese have done in Delhi-Mumbai corridor. And the architect of that is sitting here. So we see that if large projects such as the Karnali and the different projects in the basin of Mahakali has to be built, well, there has to be a partnership between major players like China and Japan who bring in cheap capital, technology, capacity to build, and a huge market in India. And Nepal will have to play the role of bridging. That's the future we envision, and that's the opportunity we see. The several visits of the Indian Prime Minister to India, to China, Chinese Prime Ministers to India, President to India recently has given a clear indication that it is no more a dream. A lot of people still talk to me that you're talking about something which is never going to happen. So far, private sector participation is concerned, Honorable Sir, I must tell you that there has to be a different set of rules of the games. The private sector involvement in infrastructure happens when the country's politics and country's policies become predictable. It's not the concession, it is predictability. Because it's not like any other industry. The gestation period of infrastructure project is anywhere from 20 to 30 years' time. And the commitments given by the government, the concessions given by the government, the PPA signed by the government must have predictability, must have enforceability. That is, I think, first rule of the game. Second, the capital has to be cheap. Why China miles ahead in infrastructure building is because Chinese companies get very cheap capital, which we are very happy about. Nepalese companies must be able to generate, and that's where I think our government needs to play a role by creating more and more multilateral or bilateral institutions which is capable of putting together cheap funding mechanisms which is available to the private sector, be it only Nepalese, I'm not saying only Nepalese, Chinese, Indian. And thirdly, the political parties will have to behave more responsibly. I think the political parties will have to rise above the politics and make sure that none of their instruments go and create problems as the project site. We have given, unfortunately, a few bad examples in the past. Not only that, even if there are local issues there, the government has to step up and stop, because the clock of the private sector when it comes to funding, it ticks 24 hours a day. It doesn't wait just because there is some disturbance or there is some kind of a question that's being raised. It is the job of the government to step in and stop those elements from any of such unfair expectations or demand. I'm confident the current government, the current leadership is taking decisive step to deal with some of the last minute, as they say, the last mile issues to settle the constitution. After that, the next task is only this. And when the road, I always tell friends that when the train carrying the projects of infrastructure begins to move from the platform, nobody wants to stay there. Everybody wants to climb up. And that's why I see all these companies here from China, India, Malaysia, and everywhere. And I thank you very much for your participation. I thank you for, and I wish to also thank the government. The kind of a role, the kind of a support that we've received from the government in organizing this clearly has given us a confidence that now the government is serious about supporting infrastructure and issues with infrastructure. And my colleagues tell me, I also want to congratulate my colleagues who've so successfully and so ably handled and organized a conference of this scale. They tell me that now we are going to have a special secretariat to organize this event every year. So with these words, I would like to take your leave and thank CNI for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts.